Hey y'all, and welcome to Politibrawl. My name is Brian, and Josh Hawley calls out this law professor as a hypocrite for hating the president in this fiery confrontation about activist judges. Let's dive in.
There have been lots of rulings against the Trump administration. That's absolutely statistically true. I disagree with almost all of them. In fact, I think all of them. But the issue of this hearing really isn't the rulings, is it? It's the remedies. Would you agree? And those are distinct things. You may think that the ruling is quite correct, but that's actually not what we're talking about here today. We could have a hearing on that. Maybe we should. But we're talking today about the remedy. And the question is a remedy that binds parties who are not before the court, is that an appropriate thing? I mean, aren't you concerned about judges binding non-parties in their remedies? You may love the ruling, but even if you do, don't you think it's a little bit anomalous for courts to be going out there and binding parties who are not before them? I mean, is that something we want to encourage?
Senator, I think that judges have been issuing rulings that impact non-parties since Marbury versus Madison, right?
So you're not concerned about it?
I'm not. I absolutely think that they can be abused, and they have been abused.
Wait a minute. You were very concerned about it just a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
You said in response to a nationwide injunction on the Biden FDA's mifepristone rules, and I quote, "This injunction's a travesty for principles of democracy, notions of judicial impartiality, and the rule of law."
I think I've been consistent today. That was issued by Judge Kaczmarek in a single judge division. They're a problem. Those are a problem.
With him personally? Wait,
no.
So your testimony is if it's issued by Judge Kaczmarek, it's bad?
No, sir.
It's personal?
That is not my testimony.
Is the problem with the injunction? You were criticizing the universal injunction
issued by a judge in a single judge division. I've been very clear today that those are a problem.
By a Republican judge in a Republican division, then it's bad.
No, Senator.
Otherwise, it's fine.
No, Senator. I think that single judge divisions
What is the
are a problem.
principal difference? I'm looking for a principle. I understand you hate the president. I understand you love all of these rulings against him. You and I both know that's not a principle. You're a lawyer. What's the principle that divides when issuing a nationwide injunction is okay when it's not? When the Biden administration was subject to nationwide injunctions, you said that they were travesties for the principle of democracy. You didn't say the referral to Judge Kaczmarek was a travesty. You said his injunction was a travesty for principles of democracy. Yeah. So, in other words, the translation is just you didn't like the outcome. Is that right?
No, Senator. Look, we're talking about, I don't think Article 3 precludes this form of relief. So we are talking about prudential consideration.
Prudential meaning political?
No.
Then give me, so far I have yet to hear it. You've been questioned by multiple senators. I have yet to hear a principle other than the fact when you like the ruling, you think it's great to apply it nationally, including non-parties. When you don't like the ruling, it is a travesty for the principles of democracy, notions of judicial impartiality, and the rule of law.
Look, Senator, I'll say I think I am self-aware enough to know that my view of the underlying legal question, I am sure colors my perception of the remedy. I think that we should all acknowledge that. And yet I do think
and why shouldn't we stop nationwide injunctions for everybody?
I think that's
what we're talking about today.
Because I'm not willing to leave without relief non-parties who are
injured.
No,
you're not willing to leave without the ability to bind President Trump.
No, I
right?
think that...
I mean, when it's Biden, it's okay. No. When it's Biden, it's a travesty. When it's Trump in office, it's no holds barred, whatever it takes, right?
I believe in a powerful...
What was it that President Biden's staff said? We've got to do undemocratic, unconstitutional things to save democracy. Why is this the same
I believe
thing?
In a powerful president. I do believe in presidential power, but power and constraint are not at fundamental odds.
What is the principle?
Power.
What is the principle? The legal principle. You've referenced prudence. You've referenced the judges you don't like. What's the principle of when an injunction binding non-parties, which was never done in this country before the 1960s? And let's see the chart, the Trump chart, which was done really only once Trump came into office for the first time. You don't think this is a little bit anomalous? You don't think that's a little bit strange?
A very plausible explanation, Senator, you have to consider is that he is engaged in much more lawless activity than other presidents, right?
You don't think
you must
this
that as a
was never
possibility.
Used before the 1960s, and suddenly Democrat judges decide we love the nationwide injunction, and then when Biden comes to office, no, actually.
It's Republican appointees as well, Senator.
The worst part about this entire exchange is this woman believes the crap she's selling. This woman, by the way, Dr. Shaw, teaches your kids. She teaches at UPenn, an Ivy League school. She teaches for a law department. She is a legitimate professor, and this is what our kids are learning at our elite schools and universities. So when I've said that there's been a long march through the institutions, this is the result. This is what happens when you give leftists any institutional power. They will have the entire institution rotted to the core because they believe the crap they're selling. Hey y'all, ever feel like nicotine pouches just don't deliver? Dry, weak, overpriced, and somehow getting worse? That's exactly why ALP was created. Founded by Tucker Carlson, ALP is a nicotine patch designed by people who actually use them. No watered down nonsense, no fluff, just bold, flavorful pouches that hit the way they're supposed to. Each can of ALP comes packed with 20 packages, more than brands like Zen, and you'll feel the difference from the first use. Choose from wintergreen, chilled mint, tropical fruit, refreshing chill, and sweet nectar. All available in 3, 6, and 9 milligram strength. Try ALP once and you'll wonder why you ever settled for less. Better flavor, more pouches. ALP is just a better time. Visit ALP at alppouch.com. That's ALPPOUCH.com and see for yourself what a real nicotine pouch feels like. You must be 21 years old to purchase. And warning, this product contains nicotine, and nicotine is an addictive chemical. Now, back to regularly scheduled programming. Nationwide injunctions. They've been around since the 1960s, which means that when our nation was founded, we actually did not give too much teeth to a judiciary system. As a matter of fact, the judiciary system had to give itself some extra teeth because in our Constitution, the whole design of the judicial branch was quite literally when states have a problem with the federal government, that's where they go. When there are problems crossing state lines and legal proceedings, that's the process that they were supposed to follow. That was the intent. And I'm not much of an originalist, but that sounds like a better system than we have today, because ever since the 1960s, we now have a problem with something called activist judges. My granddaddy used to warn me from an early age, before I could fully understand what he meant, that activist judges are more ruinous to a nation than the worst of Congress. And he turned out to be completely right. And let's pull up the graph that Josh Hawley's talking about. Nationwide injunctions against recent presidents. George W. Bush, 6. Under Obama, 12. Okay, so there's a doubling there. That's interesting. Under Trump's first term, 64. And then it falls back to 14 for Joe Biden. Those numbers are, on one hand, obviously increasing. The 12 to 14 is interesting, but 64 nationwide injunctions against President Trump? I'm a student of Occam's razor here. If there's one outlier on a set of data points, you need to treat it like an outlier. It's more likely that the left and the judicial power that they actually do wield, while in the Supreme Court we only have 3 leftist activist judges, and only one of them has actually had a history of actually defending herself well. But you mean to tell me that a federal judicial system found Trump's first term, compared to 8 years of Bush, 8 years of Obama, 4 years of Biden, that tells me that we have an out-of-control judiciary when they're finding 64 nationwide injunctions, and currently the number is rising. This is insane. You cannot have a functioning republic when you have an out-of-control branch. We know that Congress won't do anything. They don't ever give themselves the tough assignments. They try to pass that off to the president because, it's apparently too hard for 435 members of Congress to, get elected. So they pass off more of their responsibility to the president, or they'll pass off responsibility to the courts. And now we have 2 wings just fighting each other constantly. You have the executive branch fighting the judicial branch constantly. Glenn Beck turned out to be a prophet because he had a wonderful little image in one of his books. I believe it was Broke. I remember seeing it, and it had an eagle, 3 eagles all joined together. One was blindfolded and smaller than the other 2, and the other 2 were actively fighting each other. That's what's been going on for over a couple of decades now, and it's gotten even worse. It is now worse that we have these activist judges going up against the Trump presidency and then saying, oh, you can't deport someone because a proper piece of paperwork wasn't filed properly. You cannot have a functioning country with this sort of ridiculous bureaucracy. You do need that in order to make sure everything's airtight. And some of that, I'm going to be honest, is a skill issue. It just is. But what's not a skill issue is constantly using and abusing judicial power in order to stop something that the will of the people has clearly demanded. We have got to get a hold of the legal immigration problem. We've got to get a hold of the fentanyl problem. We have got to get a hold of the spending problem. And when you have activist judges constantly fighting the will of the American people, the belief in democracy starts to fade. This is what democracies are built on. The faith of the people. When you don't have that, guess what? Chaos ensues every single time. And the worst part about this exchange is that Josh Hawley has her basically in a headlock, and she's grinning from ear to ear because she knows in her heart that she's going to end up winning. When the reality is, if she was presenting her argument before her peers, if she was presenting it in a court of law, if she was presenting it in front of a whole bunch of scientists, they would laugh her out of the room. But because she has bought into her own load of crap, she has this look on her face like she's the righteous warrior who's actually winning. This is terrifying to me because this woman teaches our kids at an Ivy League school. This mentality will destroy our country unless we get it under wraps somehow. There is a clear outlier of these nationwide injunctions. Occam's razor basically suggests that there's something going on with our judiciary that makes them go after President Trump. And it's either a skill issue on the Trump administration, or it's the fact that these activist judges have lost their minds and care more about their agenda than the will of the American people. That is a terrifying prospect to me. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. My name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here on Politibrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. Until then, y'all have a good one.